at night, and Jiwoo asks him why he is trying so hard to get stronger, and he replies he wants to get stronger than anybody else. Suddenly, he feels a large amount of energy at the door and guesses that Jiyoung has come there and asks Jiwoo to meet her while he will stay there. Mr. Caden was right, as when he opened the door, Jiyoung was standing there and asks him to talk for a minute. He takes her inside the home and she asks him about force control. He replies that it is a way of controlling awakened powers, and he was able to do it when he was little. She reveals that force control is the method to share powers with the close ones and keeps it a secret, and asks him if he knows about that, while Jiwoo remembers that Mr. Caden told him to keep it a secret. He is nervous that whether he should tell her or not, but she asks him not to be nervous and keep it a secret that he knows force control. When she leaves, he comes to Mr. Caden and asks him why he has taught him such an important thing, and he reveals that there were tons of people who wanted to follow him just because of the force control, and it is his choice to teach him that. Jiwoo hugs him while crying and thanks him for everything he has done for him. The next day in the class, the teacher announces the summer vacations that are starting the next day, and Jiwoo entered the class when it is about to be over. Jiwoo asks him to walk home with him, and on the other side, Jisuk's friends ask him to hang out with them, but he refuses to go with them. They all went shopping and buys a lot of snacks and junk food. When they reach home, Subin was already there waiting for them and asks Wooin why he refused her offer to lunch with her. Wooin apologizes for turning her down, but he has made plans with them first. Jiwoo also tells her that they had planned to hang out all night at his home, but she doesn't seem to be in a good mood. Meanwhile, Jisuk calls Mr. Seongha and tells him about Subin and that she is again making a fuss there. Jiwoo offers for her to join them at his house, and they plan to go to the academy together, but she refuses by saying that she has a lot of things to do, but later ends up staying there. The next morning, Hee-hyuk and Boyoung went to pick them up from Jiwoo's house and were shocked to see Subin there, and that they have stayed there all night. Hyuk asks all of them to get in the van as they are going to the academy right now. While leaving, Mr. Caden instructed the monster cat to not attack the people who come to feed them and look after the house while they went. They all sleeping now as they stayed up all night, and Hyuk advises Hee-hyuk and Boyoung to not get nervous and focus on the academy. After a while, Hyuk woke all of them up and says they will be arriving at the academy anytime. Jiyoung receives a message from Hyuk who tells him that they have reached the academy. The academy exists on an island, and Jiwoo finds it fascinating. And Biko's leader himself comes to welcome them, and Mr. Caden feels a lot of energy from him. They ask Jiwoo and Wooin to come with them as their rooms will be separate from the others. The instructor leads them to their rooms and asks them to read the information booklet placed inside. The academic schedule will start tomorrow, so they should prepare themselves in advance. Jiwoo likes his room very much, while Mr. Caden doesn't like that they have wasted so much money on the rooms. Hyuk goes to meet the principal of the academy, Seongik-han, who was once called the strongest awakened one in the country, while he is feeling exhausted to talk to him. After some time, some students came to see Jiwoo and ask him about his awakened powers. Wooin comes there and says they are not allowed to ask for each other's awakened powers. He suggests them that unaffiliated awakened should stick together, as the academy will not give them the right protocol. But Wooin refuses by saying he doesn't need to tell him anything right now. He gets angry and tries to threaten them, but it has not any effect on them, especially Wooin. Hyuk calls Jiyoung and informs her about the principal, that he seemed to be planning on staying. Also, the other groups are keeping their kids in check, and the students from the other groups except for Shinhwa, and the union got there about half a month ago. On the other side, Wooin and the Jeongsu seem to be in a fight, and Jiwoo is trying to stop them, but Jisuk comes there and kicks him and asks him why he is threatening his friends. Jiwoo says to him that he should not hit someone like that, and Jeongsu is shocked at how Jiwoo knows Jisuk of Shinhwa. Suddenly, his attitude changes and apologizes to them, while Jiwoo is shocked to see his sudden mood changes. Subin also comes there, while Mr. Caden doesn't seem happy on their arrival. They reveal that their dorms are far apart from each other, even though they are in different buildings. When they have left, Jiwoo asks Mr. Caden why unaffiliated awakened should stick together, and the thing that Jeongsu said is that the academy doesn't care about them, and Mr. Caden tells him that is a common issue, and that he should not worry about that. The next day, all the students are talking about them, and they refuse to tell their awakened powers and have Jisuk and Shinhwa's back. They are also talking about the party that was thrown for affiliated students, but Jiwoo is shocked because Jisuk and Subin were both with them until the curfew. A man enters there and he introduces himself as Jiwook-jang and that he will be their instructor throughout the academy. He then asks all of them to tell their awakened powers, and all of them tell their powers one by one, but Jiwoo refuses to tell his awakened power on his turn and says he was told that he shouldn't tell others about his powers. Mr. Jang states it will be wiser for him to disclose his powers now and learn than to hide them. Jiwoo says he is aware of that, but he doesn't want to disappoint the ones who taught him to hide his powers. Mr. Jang says he respects his decision, but he refused to do as he said, so he has to run 20 laps there. Now, it's Wooin's turn and he refuses to tell him to. They both start running in the training ground. On the other hand, In-hyuk goes to Jiwoo's room and brought a lot of snacks for Mr. Kaden while he wonders what is with him. Mr. Jang asks all of them to spar with each other as he wants to check their powers. Jiangsu goes first and thinks he will take everyone down and show them what he is capable of, and Wooin is his first opponent. He confidently attacks him, but Wooin takes him down in just one attack, and Mr. Jang wonders if he is really affiliated. He thinks the Union has brought a monster and Jiangsu is feeling embarrassed about his loss. He requests Mr. Jang to give him another chance and he accepts his request. Mr. Jang asks Jiwoo to go up next and Jiwoo asks him if he is really okay for a fight, but Jiangsu thinks he is looking down on him. He guesses from his posture that he can fight him, and this time, he will definitely prove himself. He attacks Jiwoo, but he dodges his attacks and punches his face. He tries again and again, but Jiwoo is way faster than him, and Mr. Jang estimates that he is fighting without using his powers. As he is faster than his opponent, he can fight him calmly and then kicks his leg from behind. He put damaged his leg so that he can outspeed him even more, and this makes Jiangsu injured badly. Mr. Jang thinks there is no need to see more of this and asks them to stop while Wooin thumbs up to Jiwoo. Mr. Kaden is taking a round of the place and he can feel powerful energies there, and recognizes the principal there but wonder what he is doing there. He cuddles him by thinking of a cat. Next is Gangwoo and Jihai turns. He seems confident, but she lifts him in the air at a height. He asks her to put her down, but she releases him from a height and he falls to the ground. The instructor asks one student to take him to the medical center and then asks Jiwoo to spar with Jihai this time. He wants to check him again as his ability level is unclear. They are ready for a fight, and this time they both know each other's powers. Jihai thinks she will just lift him in the air and drop him a few times as she did with Gangwoo. She throws a bubble at him, but before that Jiwoo reaches her and punches her, and Mr. Jang notices that he is faster than earlier. She becomes unconscious. Jiwoo rushes toward her and tries to wake her up while Mr. Jang is in a deep thought that Jiwoo has been trained to use his powers to his advantage. Jiwoo asks him for help for Jihai, but he assures him that she will recover soon after getting treatment from the medical center, and finds out that Jiwoo has a soft heart. In the evening, he comes back to his room and starts telling Mr. Kaden everything about his day. Mr. Han remembers the time when he had a spar with Kaden and was lost by his powers, and now the academy leader informs him that Kaden has been missing for a long time and no one has seen him too. On the other side, Mr. Kaden is training when Jiwoo leaves the room for training too, and thinks he should focus on his recovery because if Mr. Han figures out about him, things might get out of hand. Meanwhile, Jiwoo apologizes to Jihai for yesterday as he got too nervous and lost control, and asks about their health one by one. Mr. Jang asks all of them to run and not stop until he tells them, and Jiangsu and Gangwoo have to run twice as fast as Wooseok and Jihai, while Wooin and Jiwoo have to run 3 times as fast as the others. They all run for 5 hours and get extremely tired, and Mr. Jang asks them to have their meals and see him tomorrow. Jiwoo calls him and asks if this is the end of the class while other students are watching him in a state of shock. But Mr. Jang asks them to get their food first, and the class has ended. He asks everyone to go to the cafeteria, and Jihai thinks this is unfair because they are in a different dorm and cafeteria than the affiliated ones. Suddenly, Jisuk and Subin come there to meet Jiwoo and Wooin, and they are all shocked to see them there. Mr. Jang asks In-hyuk that what they are thinking about Jiwoo and Wooin as they are already trained, and In-hyuk is happy that Jiwoo didn't tell him about his awakened ability because he was the one who told him to hide them. The next day during training, other students are getting jealous of both of them as they are like monsters who never get tired. When they ended, Mr. Jang asks all the students to go eat their meal and get some rest. Jihai calls him and exclaims that she can't take it anymore because they are just running for the past few days and that they do not have come there to become runners. Also, it is unfair that they have been treated differently from affiliated students, and they want to be treated as equally as the other students. But Mr. Jang explains that they all have a long history and a tremendous influence on this country, and they are elites who were trained by those groups ever since they were little, and they can't even compare themselves with them, as they do not have any background or powers. If they are not happy with the academy's system or its teaching styles, they may leave as the academy, and the groups are not charities at all. After that, in the cafeteria, Jihai takes out her frustration on Jiwoo and Wooin that they do not have anything to worry about because they will join Union and Shinhwa. They don't want to waste their time like this as they think affiliate students are way ahead of them. Jiangsu says they should not complain and thankful that the academy has taken them here, so don't be upset and stay quiet. When he gets outside, there is someone waiting for him and scolds him for being owned by Jiwoo and Wooin. He is beating him because he felt humiliated when Jisuk laughed at him for his defeat. Suchin warns him if this happens again, he will reject him from joining the academy and kill him too. The next day, Mr. Jang gets informed that there will be a spar between affiliated and non-affiliated students and he tries to stop them, but the decision has already been made. The next day, he makes them run faster than usual while Jiwoo and Wooin are again full of energy. When they have ended, Mr. Jang reveals that he is going to teach them force control and it will help them to use their awakened powers more efficiently and enhance them more properly. When they start, Mr. Jang thinks it will be difficult for them to pick up immediately as it is probably hard to even remember the feeling left within the body. He notices Wooin and is shocked that he already knows about force control and wonders where he could have learned it. He then notices that Jiwoo also knows force control and he does exactly what he did with such ease. If he knows the force control already or not, then how could he pick it up so quickly and use it so easily? After training, they are all excited because they have learned something new while Wooin and Jiwoo are eating quietly. After some time, Suchin comes there with his friends and bullies them for using force control. He then asks Jiangsu if he is learning too, and when he says yes, Suchin slaps his face because he didn't ask him for permission. He starts beating him when Jiwoo asks him to stop at it is none of his business if he learns force control or not. He comes to him and asks who brought him there when Yihuk appears and says they have brought him. He says Shinhwa has brought that punk and Suchin says they should have at least educated him before bringing him there. Yihuk gets angry as he thinks they are looking down on Shinhwa while Suchin says Jiwoo was ordering him to stop teaching lessons to the unaffiliated students. Jiwoo tells him that he was bullying them instead of teaching and Suchin asks Jiangsu if he bullied him, who is scared of him, so he tells no. Yihuk, who is understanding the situation and finds Jiangsu has no choice but to say that way, and Suchin asks him to give Jiwoo a hint that how things play out there. Jiwoo asks him if he enjoys bullying the weak just because he belongs to a powerful group, and that they are bullying the unaffiliated awakened ones because they do not have that much power. He gets furious and tries to attack him, but Yihuk comes in between and says that he will not let him lay hands on him. Meanwhile, Mr. Jang comes there and asks all of them to stop and leave them to their dorms. The purpose of the spar is to feel the difference between unaffiliated and affiliated kids, and Hyuk appreciates Mr. Jang that he is teaching force control to the students. When they were going to their rooms, Jiangsu calls him and thanks him for everything he did earlier, and that he owes him now. He also apologizes to him that he could not be honest even though he stood up for him because he has to join a group no matter what. The next day, he comes to them and talks like they are friends. The attitude of other students also seems good with Jiwoo and he is shocked that they never talked to him first. They reveal that their attitude toward him changes because he stood up for Jiangsu yesterday, and they all now want to become friends. Mr. Jang comes there and they are all shocked to see Hyuk and Seongha with them. He reveals that these two instructors will teach all of them with him and that they are ranked as 2 of the top 20 awakened ones in the country. They are more surprised when Hyuk reveals that Mr. Jang is also one of the top 20 rankers like them. Mr. Jang asks all of them to run, and when they have done, Seongha asks them to do a handstand. They all try to do that, but no one succeeded except Wooin and Jiwoo, and they all think that they really are monsters. All the other teachers are unhappy as in Hyuk and Seongha teaching the unaffiliated students, and they are unable to understand why they are doing that because this thing can't help Shinhwa and Union in any way. In the evening, Yihuk and Boyoung come to their dorms and she asks him to meet Jiwoo. They see Suchin is again going there with his friends and Boyoung asks them if they again going to bully them. But Suchin says she should mind her own business and asks them why they are fighting because of unaffiliated kids. Meanwhile, Jisuk comes there and asks them why they are blocking the way, and Boyoung tells him that they picked on Jiwoo yesterday, and Jisuk kicks him without even thinking. Suchon wonders what happened to him suddenly and Jisuk tells him to move out of the way. Back to the time when Jisuk was a younger kid, his first appearance was a shock to everyone. Although his talent and ability weren't as striking as his sister's, he was incomparable to others of his age. Everyone as Shinhwa was shocked by how great Jisuk was. He was one who fought anyone who got in his way, even age didn't matter to him. And today, Yihuk is happy because of his bad temper because he has beaten the one whom he wanted for a long time. This is the first time in his life that Jisuk is so helpful. Suchin tries to beat him but he is way stronger than him and knees him down before him. He gets furious and tries to use his awakened power, and Jisuk is also ready to fight him. Hyuk and Boyoung think they have to stop Jisuk as it is strictly forbidden to fight with awakened powers within the academy, and if anyone breaks this rule their group will be held uncountable. Meanwhile, 2 instructors come there and ask them to back off, and they are just blaming Jisuk while taking the side of his group Baekdu. Jisuk states he hasn't used his powers yet, and Boyoung informs him that Suchin also tried to use his powers. Moreover, he was the one who picked up the fight with Jisuk and blocked the hallway. Boyoung also says that Suchin picked a fight with her too as she asked him to not bully the unaffiliated kids, but he swore at her. The instructor says they should just let them off this time because they didn't use their powers yet. After that, Hyuk informs him that he got a call from one of his men, and he said the cats are doing well. Also, they are sleeping well and eating well. In the evening, when they are sitting in the living room and talking about cats, Wooin reveals that there is a cat in Jiwoo's room and they all ask him to show them. He takes them to his room and they are all shocked to see such a fat little cat. The next morning, Mr. Han calls in Hyuk and Seongha and asks them why they are teaching unaffiliated kids. But Hyuk is at the point that it is up to them whether to teach them or not, but Mr. Han asks them to teach affiliated kids instead of them. It is better for them to teach affiliated rather than the unaffiliated ones who are still in question. He gives them the time for 1 week to think about it. Hyuk informs Mr. Jang that there will be a test to evaluate the affiliated and unaffiliated students, and if they fail then Hyuk and Seongha will no longer be able to teach them. They just have 1 week to prove that the unaffiliated kids can be better and that they should be treated equally. Hyuk reveals that Subin and Jisuk were not able to defeat Wooin in a spar, and Mr. Jang is shocked to learn that. Moreover, they 3 fought with Clean's brothers too and manages to survive until the chairwoman found them. They reach the training ground and ask them to run as fast as they can while Mr. Jang asks Wooin and Jiwoo to follow him. He then takes them to another ground and asks Wooin to stand in front of him as he wants to see for himself how strong he is and orders him to attack him. Wooin attacks him, but he blocks his first attack and then asks him to attack him with something stronger. This time he attacks him with more power and Mr. Jang gets a little hurt to block him. Wooin claims he can make it stronger, but he says that is enough. Next is Jiwoo's turn and he asks him to attack him as much as he wants and to not go easy on him. He moves with great speed and tries to attack him, but Mr. Jang blocks him and asks him to move faster. Next time, Jiwoo moves with a faster speed and he is shocked to see his that much speed. He now gets why Hyuk and Seongha said this is their chance. Later, they inform the students about the spar that is going to be held between affiliated and unaffiliated kids and advise them to do their best and show them what they are capable of. As of today, they will intensify their training until the day of the spar, and it is better for them to bite the bullet and follow his lead. All the students get nervous as they think the affiliated kids will not go easy on them. Jiwoo advises them to not worry about those things anymore and get ready for the match together. When he comes back to his room, Mr. Caden was not there and taking a walk on the lawn. He goes after him and he reveals that he is getting a better understanding of the body helps him enhance his fighting abilities. They were chatting while walking when a girl comes there with a big dog and she says to Jiwoo that his cat is too fat and it was making him look ugly. She says that she wants to take the cat and that she will be the owner of the cat from now on. Jiwoo finds her weird and asks Mr. Caden to go, but she uses her powers and asks them to stop. She has the ability to control animals and controls Mr. Caden too, and he starts to follow her. But after going to her, Mr. Caden comes back to Jiwoo and says the girl doesn't know her place. She gets furious because Mr. Caden ignores her and feels humiliated and thinks she will make him her cat no matter what. Mr. Caden senses ominous feelings from her and she wants him at any cost. She introduces herself as Isol and thinks Jiwoo has the power to control animals, so Mr. Caden didn't obey her and asks Jiwoo to join their group, Mir. Jiwoo is trying to tell her that she misunderstood his powers, but she thinks he is hiding his powers and it's no use trying to hide his power from her. Jiwoo says he doesn't want to affiliate with any group yet while she leaves by calling him an idiot. Mr. Caden advises him to tell others that he has the power to control animals, otherwise he might get in trouble and he can only communicate with him, not other animals. On the other hand, the affiliated kids also get informed that they are going to spar with unaffiliated and that they are 6, so they have to choose 6 from the affiliated kids. Jisuk states he wants to drop out of the match and following him. Yihyuk and Boyeon also say the same, while the teacher leaves them without saying anything. On the other side, when unaffiliated kids are training, Miss Ko comes there and says she heard something from Isol, so she came to check it out. She asks about Jiwoo and asks if he can control animals while the all others are in a state of shock. They are surprised that he has another kind of awakened power, which means his superpower is amazing. while Jiwoo says he is not so good at this, but it works only for one cat and doesn't work on any other animals. They are again shocked that casein nitrate is the cat Jiwoo controls, and he reveals that he can make him fight. After that, when he comes to his room, he tells Mr. Caden everything that happened to him and that he told them that he used him for combat. After a while, Subin, Jisuk, and Wooin come to his room and they both are fighting about whose voice is louder than the other. She asks Wooin to make the decision that who is louder and he takes her name. After that, Jisuk politely presents snacks to Mr. Caden. Then they talk about the upcoming spar and Subin reveals she is not worried about Wooin, but a little worried about Jiwoo. Jisuk says she should not be worried about them as he once fought with him and Wooin. Suddenly, Jisuk notices Subin is sitting on Mr. Caden's tail, and he jumps on the bed and kicks her. She asks him if he gets crazy and he says how dare she sits on the cat's tail. She apologizes to Mr. Caden and Jisuk says he can help them to get ready for the match. Subin also offers herself help as she also has nothing to do. They take him to the training ground and he tells his awakened power to Subin because he already knows her power. They start fighting and Jiwoo attacks first and uses his awakened power speed to punch her. He didn't give her the time to stable and attacks him again and again until she asks him to stop. She asks him why he is so fast while Jiwoo claims he already told her that, and Jiwoo laughs so loudly because she has been beaten up as she let her guard down. He appreciates Jiwoo as he did really well. Suddenly, her nose starts bleeding and Jisuk starts making fun of her. She gets furious and starts attacking him and Wooin tries to stop them. The next few days pass while they are all busy in training and learning force control. On the other hand, Jiyoung comes there for a visit and visits the principal office. The day has come when they have to spar with affiliated kids and Mr. Jang orders all of them to stand in order. Suchin warns Jiwoo that he will not leave him this time. First, Taeyoung is unaffiliated and Suichu of Hall comes into the ring, and Taeyoung is so terrified and just wants to give up. But he stabilizes himself and thinks he doesn't want to run away without even trying in front of them. Sui attacks him with her left foot kick and hits him before he dodges the attack. He read her move but he wasn't quick enough to dodge it, and unable to move from that single kick and feels pathetic. He gets up and asks her to use her awakened power instead of combat, as his power is non-combat too. He just told that to know her awakened power so that Wooin will have a clue of what power his opponent will use, but she refuses to do so. But later, she makes a sphere of her power and attacks him that hits him so badly that Sui announces herself as the winner of the fight. Next up is Jukyoung of Mir and Gangwoo of the unaffiliated, and he thinks to use everything out at the beginning and show them what he is capable of. He attacks her again and again and didn't give her the chance to get stable, but later he realizes that he was just dreaming about his win. Jukyoung's awakened power is mind control, and she uses her awakened power to control his mind so that he finds himself in an empty space. Later he finds himself from a height and falls to the ground so badly that he is unable to move. Next up is Hyunga Park of Baekdu and Jihai of the unaffiliated, but she also took her down so easily. Jihai gets up and lifts her in the air, but she uses her awakened power and comes to the ground herself. Jihai gives up, but she is attacking her with her foot again and again. Jiwoo shouts from his place and asks her to stop why she is attacking her when she has given up. But Suchin forbids him that he is not allowed to interfere with a match no matter what. Mr. Jang apologizes to an instructor that he didn't teach the kids about the rules, so this is all his fault. He exclaims that this is the first official spar for the kids and asks him to give up on the match, and the other teachers also agree with him. Hence, Hyunga Park of Baekdu announces as the winner, and the next up is Inyang of Baekdu and Jeongsu of the unaffiliated, and he thinks to focus on what he can do as much as he can. Jeongsu's idea was to get him over before he reaches him, but it fails when In-young reaches him in no time and kicks him. He sits down when he realizes that his opponent lets his guard down and punches him with all of his might. In-young gets angry and uses his awakened power, and Jeongsu finds himself submerged in the earth and is unable to move. He then falls them with so much force that the floor cracks from that area. The winner is In-young Ka of Baekdu, and Mr. Han and Ji-young are watching all this from his office. Mr. Han says it is just a waste of time to watch over them. Next up is Woon-young of Hala and Wooin of the unaffiliated, and while leaving, Wooin asks them to keep their head up and watch because this is going to be worth watching. The fight has started and the first attack was from Wooin, which goes very well. He then uses his awakened powers and attacks him before he gets stable, while Jisuk and Subin are happy that he is doing very well. Woon-young also uses his awakened powers and attacks him, but Wooin changes the trajectory of the 28 attack and deflects it toward the opponent. After that, Wooin announces as the winner of that spar. All the instructors are in a state of shock that how can an awakened one as strong as him stay under the radar for so long. Mr. Han says Wooin was the card Mr. Jang had up his sleeve when he made the offer of the spar, and he is thinking to invest in Wooin. Next up is the Suchin Kang of Baekdu and Jiwoo of the unaffiliated, and this time, Jiwoo has a slim chance of winning as his opponent is as strong as Jisuk and Subin. Suchin is sure of his winning and uses his awakened power to attack Jiwoo, but he reaches him before that and punches his face. But Suchin gets stable and pushes him back, and Jiwoo's body feels heavy all of a sudden, which makes Jiwoo's attack ineffective. He can't move and Suchin falls him to the ground after lifting him up. He then lifts him up and hangs him in the air and starts torturing him, and Jiwoo feels like his whole body is getting crushed. But he thinks he will not give up and remembers when Mr. Caden asked him if he can get a chance to win the fight and asked him not to give up. Suchin is beating him up while Jiwoo thinks he let his guard down a little because he is out of breath when using his powers. This is the time Jiwoo gets and freed himself from his awakened power and is again ready to fight. Mr. Jang thinks he has done enough and has shown everyone the potential the unaffiliated awakened ones have. He then asks him to give up, but he replies that he can fight to the end. Suchin this time has the intention to crush him up, but Jiwoo reaches him and steps back suddenly because he had spread his powers and could be trapped if he steps in. He needs to get close to attack him, but this will put him inside the boundary of Suchin's awakened power. He notices that Suchin's power is not focused on one spot but is spreading out and thinks to punch a hole into that power. With the maximum speed and the power of electricity that Mr. Caden taught him, he is going to get through there. He did what he wanted to and he punched him with his full might. He did this with so much speed that everyone missed his move, and Jiwoo Seo is announced as the winner. Wooin holds him and Mr. Jang appreciates them all that they have shown the potential the unaffiliated awakened ones have. On the other side, Mr. Han gets stuck in the electric power which was used by Jiwoo, and it reminds him of Caden. The next morning, when he gets up, Mr. Caden is sitting beside him and asks him about his health and reveals that he has been sleeping for 3 days. He asks him if he watched his match and that he won too, and Mr. Caden replies he was his teacher, so that all things should have a piece of cake for him. All of his group members come to see him and they thank him that he beat up Suchin. On the other hand, the instructor tells Suchin that his father is very disappointed when he heard about his match and advises him to get stronger. The next day, when he enters the cafeteria, he notices all the students are watching him, so he shouts at them and asks them to get their meals. After a while, Jisuk comes to him and inquires about his health while he is shocked why he is asking about him. Jisuk says he also got punched by Jiwoo and it hurts like hell, and they are all shocked to learn that Jisuk has fought Jiwoo. Comes to the instructor, who thinks that they have cheated because Jiwoo and Wooin have been trained more systematically than most affiliated students, while In-hyuk says he is just claiming without evidence. Miss Ko says she wants to test Jiwoo's ability to commune with animals, and they all are surprised that he has another ability too. The next morning, Mr. Jang and In-hyuk come to his room to inquire about his health, and he replies that he still has some wounds to heal. They inform him that from now on, unaffiliated students will be as equally educated as the affiliated ones, and that the classes will begin in a few days. Moreover, they are going to test his power to commune with animals, as the teacher wants to see how strong his other powers are. Later, Mr. Caden says they just have to pretend that he really has that kind of power while Isol is following them. Mr. Caden tells him that the girl has been watching them for some time. The next day, he brings Mr. Caden to the training ground, and teachers ask him what else he can do with the cat except for combat. Jiwoo says he can communicate with him to some degree, and combat is the best thing he can make him do. They start the test and keep Mr. Caden and Jiwoo at 2 different places and ask him to ask the cat what is on the other side of the wall. They take many tests, but Mr. Caden doesn't show interest, so they can get that cat can't do much. After that, Mr. Seong says that he wants to do the combat test on the cat and he has intentions to kill him. But they are all shocked when Mr. Caden jumps on him and punches his face because he glared at him with that weird look. Jiwoo is trying to hold him back, but he seems very angry with him and not ready to leave him. After that, he scolds him for why he did that to Mr. Seong, and he replies he couldn't stop himself when he saw that ferocious look on his face, and that he tried to kill him. He saw it in his eyes that he probably thought he could get away with killing him by disguising it as an accident. Just thinking of his plan pisses him off. On the other side, In-hyuk reveals that Mr. Seong has 4 broken teeth, a broken nose, and a fractured skull, and they wonder how a small cat can have such strong combat power. In-hyuk is at the point where there are still unsolved mysteries about acts, and this is just another one of those mysteries now revealed to the world, while they all know that he is obsessed with cats. Moreover, the cat attacked Mr. Seong with just a kitty punch, also known as cat punch, and even ordinary cats can use it. After that, they are evaluating Jiwoo's performance. First of all, his fighting abilities are weaker than Suchin's, and he only lost because he dragged the fight. He had Jiwoo overpowered and had the chance to end him, and they think he may be better than other students, but he is not exactly at the same level as Jisuk, Subin, Gangseok, and Suchin, but they can't put him below them. Mr. Han informed Mr. Seong that he got injured while testing a student named Jiwoo, and he asks him, man, to bring information about Jiwoo as soon as possible. Jiwoo and Mr. Kaden went outside for a walk when they notice Isol is watching them again. She asks him if he is walking his cat and if he thought about joining Mir. Jiwoo asks her permission to pat her dog and says it is softer than he looks and praises him that he must be a popular dog. They both are chatting about each other's animals while Jisuk, Subin, and Wooin are watching them while hiding in a bush. After that, they went to his room and are teasing him by repeating all the sentences that he asked Isol. They ask him what is going on between him and Isol, and he is trying to explain to them that there is nothing like that. He just talked to her for the second time, and they both think Isol has a secret crush on Jiwoo, which makes things more interesting. They leave his room and now are finding Isol, and Wooin asks them what they are doing. Jisuk states that when he can clearly see someone has a secret crush, it is their duty to follow them to the ends of the earth and make fun of them. On the other side, Mr. Han gets informed that Jiwoo remained unnoticed until Shinhwa discovered him, and his power was not outstanding at all when he was first found. He thinks he should talk to Jiwoo himself. He calls him out at such a late hour, and Mr. Kaden wonders what he is planning to do. He tells him that he has heard a lot about him from other teachers and that he can use his powers based on super speed and electricity, and that he is even able to commune with animals, while Jiwoo says he just won that match by luck and his friends are much stronger than him. He asks him about his future plan, and he learned that there is nothing official between him and Shinhwa. He then offers him to be his apprentice, while Mr. Kaden and Jiwoo are both in a state of shock. Jiwoo asks him why he is offering him something like that, and Mr. Han replies because he has a remarkable talent. He will be able to get much stronger under his guidance. Mr. Kaden thinks this is definitely a good offer for Jiwoo is that way. He will be able to live with nothing to hide instead of worrying that his relationship with him may get revealed. Becoming his apprentice is best for Jiwoo's future. Jiwoo states that he already has a mentor, and Mr. Han says his mentor will also be happy about his offer. Jiwoo is grateful for the offer, but he declines it. Mr. Han gives him some time to think about it. The next morning, Isol is coming out for a walk and searches for Jiwoo and finds him after a while. Meanwhile, Jisuk, Subin, and Wooin come there, and Subin asks him why she keeps flirting with her boyfriend and informs her that Jiwoo is her boyfriend. When Isol refuses to believe her, she asks Jusk to confirm that, and he says Subin is telling the truth. Isol is shocked to hear that and starts running from there while they both are following her, and states that even Subin slept over at Jiwoo's house the day before the academy, and she is feeling so upset. They both are enjoying her condition and follow her to the park. Jiwoo is doing exercise there when Mr. Han appears there and asks him if this is the cat he commune with. He bows before him and says he wants to be the owner of the cat and gives them snacks too. After that, Mr. Kaden says being his apprentice doesn't simply mean he gets stronger and will gain some authority, and his life will become a bed of roses. In the evening, Jisuk brings a lot of snacks for Mr. Kaden and also apologizes to him for his carelessness, and tells him that he has ordered a lot of snacks for him which will be there soon. Mr. Kaden is getting annoyed by him while the other three are watching them surprisingly. Subin wonders why he always acts weird around the cat. On the other side, Jiyoung receives a message from Jisuk and asks him to send him all products of cats. The next day, Suchin's father, Mr. Kang, comes to visit the academy and meets Mr. Han at his office. On being inquired, he reveals that he has come there to meet his old friend, and asks him why unaffiliated students will be educated as equally as their affiliated students. Mr. Han reveals that he has seen potential in a few of them, and one of them actually defeated Suchin, and is the principal of the academy. He has the authority to set the rules there. After that, Jiwoo was walking around when Mr. Han reaches there and asks him if they can walk together. He then asks him if he thought about his offer, while Jiwoo says he has already given his answer. On the other side, Mr. Kang is scolding Suchin because he has lost to an unaffiliated kid and has dishonored Baekdu. He says he would have abandoned him immediately if there was another heir to succeed Baekdu, and that he has to win no matter what. After that, he turns toward Mr. Seong and says how dare he let Suchin lose, and he will have a punishment for that. Mr. Seong bows before him and asks for forgiveness and assures him that he will make things straight. He thinks he will destroy Jiwoo so he can never use his awakened powers again, and then he will take responsibility for his actions. Suddenly, he sees Mr. Kaden there and thinks first he will kill the cat, and then deal with Jiwoo. Mr. Caden was roaming around when he reaches there and uses his awakened powers to hold him down and thinks he can't move, but Mr. Caden jumps from his place and sits on his shoulder. Mr. Caden uses his awakened power and made him unconscious. The next day, In-hyuk reveals that Mr. Seong was struck by lightning and is now unconscious, and all the instructors are in a state of shock. He asks all of them to pray for his recovery and everyone is silent for a moment. Mr. Kang is also shocked that he stormed out of the room to make things straight but instead got knocked out by lightning, and his man reveals that he can't meet him right now and asks his man to pay a visit to Jiwoo. Jiwoo is walking when Isol is watching him and wants to say hi but can't. She still doesn't believe that he is her boyfriend of Subin. Meanwhile, Subin and Jisuk reach there and she says that she warned her to get away from her boyfriend but now she has crossed the line. Isol says she doesn't like Jiwoo at all, and when she looked back, Jiwoo was standing behind her. She gets so upset that he heard everything while Jiwoo says he was never popular with girls. After a while, Mr. Kang reaches there and asks Jiwoo to talk to him for a moment. He then makes him an offer and asks him to join Baekdu, and when he doesn't reply for a moment, he thinks Jiwoo is speechless out of pure joy. But he gets so shocked when Jiwoo apologizes to him and declines the offer and reveals that he already has a mentor, and also turned down the principal's offer as well. After that, he reaches out to the instructors and asks how it is possible for affiliated and unaffiliated students to be educated equally. And when they inform him that the principal has already approved that matter, he asks them to do something about it. Mr. Jang tries to persuade him by saying they have plenty of potential, but he replies they are not looking for an awakened one and humiliates him that he doesn't have a prestigious background just like them. In-hyuk prohibits him from doing so, but he states In-hyuk gets offended because Shinhwa and the Union accepted awakened ones and enhanced their powers. He then gets up and leaves the room and thinks that other groups will be happy that he stepped in and will take their stand too. Meanwhile, a man comes there and informs him that Mr. Han wants to see him, and when he gets there, he asks him to leave the academy. He thinks Mr. Han is just trying to get rid of him but tells that he wants to stay a little longer as the guardian of the Baekdu students. But Mr. Han reveals that a guardian is not to stay on campus for days, and only visits are allowed. The next day, Jiwoo goes to take the class first time after recovery, and they inform him that from the next week, they will be taking the same classes as the affiliated students. After a while, Mr. Kang reaches there and asks everyone to get out of there except Jiwoo. But Jeongsu comes forward and says that they will not leave, and Mr. Kang tells him that he has to talk to Jiwoo in private, so they should step outside of a moment. He then tells him that he has come there to make another offer, but Jiwoo says he will refuse that too. He gets offensive on this and says he is looking down on Baekdu and lifts him up by using his awakened power. Jiwoo tries to tell him that he didn't disrespect him or Baekdu, and he gives him another chance to join Baekdu and that he will promise him only the best of everything. But Jiwoo again refuses that he doesn't want to be affiliated with any group, but he threatens him that he will take his all powers and that Jiwoo will not be able to live a normal life after that. He then starts torturing him and his voice can't go outside because he has used his power to soundproof the room. Meanwhile, In-hyuk, Jang, and Seongher reach outside the room and students inform them about the situation. Mr. Jang asks them to move aside, but they refuse to do so by saying they have orders from an elder. He then asks the students to go to their rooms and forcefully opens the door of the classroom. They are shocked to see Mr. Kang is torturing Jiwoo and rush toward him by saying he can't do this to Jiwoo. He blames Jiwoo that he is a spy who came to snoop around this academy, and In-hyuk states that Shinhwa brought him after a thorough investigation. He then asks Jiwoo to tell them about his mentor. Meanwhile, they all three are getting out their awakened powers as they have to protect their student. They all are ready for a fight when Mr. Han reaches there and asks them to stop, and says to Mr. Kang that he has to let Jiwoo go and they will investigate him again. But when he refuses to do so, Mr. Han apologizes to Jiwoo that he can't step in because they can't mess up with a group that is supporting their country for the sake of one student, but it will be a different story and Jiwoo becomes his apprentice. Then he can step in as his mentor. Mr. Kang is shocked to see that he is so desperate to have Jiwoo, but he will get rid of him before he gives an answer. But they are all in a state of shock when there is an immense amount of spark of lightning and Caden appears there to save Jiwoo. He then asks Jiwoo to watch and learn how to get rid of an enemy who gets in his way. He attacks Mr. Jang and he is unable to block his power. The attack was so effective that it breaks the roof, and all the instructors are in a state of shock that an immense amount of energy came there, but not from Mr. Kang and Mr. Han. They rush toward the classroom and are shocked to see that Mr. Kang got injured. Mr. Han recognizes him and asks what brings him there, and In-hyuk now gets that the traces they found earlier were really of him. Mr. Kang says he didn't do anything to provoke him, but Caden states he started at first by harassing his apprentice, and he is shocked to learn that Jiwoo is his apprentice. Mr. Kang apologizes to him and tells him that he didn't know he was his apprentice. Caden asks him a question that if Baekdu has anything to do with his harassment of his apprentice and gives him some time to answer otherwise. He will not step back no matter who his opponent is. Mr. Kang claims it was all his fault as he misunderstood Jiwoo and didn't know that he is his apprentice, while all the instructors are in a state of shock that the notorious Mr. Kang apologized to Caden. But he doesn't seem to leave him as he hurt Jiwoo so badly and asks him to deal with this the way he usually would and humiliates him, and all of them are now enjoying his condition. Jiwoo asks him to stop and he agrees with a warning that he will keep an eye on Mr. Kang and Baekdu. When he was leaving, Mr. Caden threatens all of them that if the news about him or Jiwoo being his apprentice gets out, he will hunt them to the ends of the earth. And the same goes for all of the instructors as he has remembered their faces, and if a single word gets out, they all will be dead. Mr. Han takes him to his office and says he always wondered who taught Jiwoo but had no idea that it was him, but he leaves his office by saying he has to check Jiwoo. When he goes to Jiwoo, he asks him why he helped him as he just put himself in danger by appearing in front of all. The next day, all the students wonder what happened the previous day. Also, it is strange that Mr. Kang left so hastily. On the other hand, Mr. Han thanks Caden that he didn't kill Mr. Kang. Otherwise, the country would have fallen into despair. He asks him if Jiwoo will leave with him and he replies Jiwoo will stay where he has to. Caden asks him why he retired so suddenly, and he reveals that he retired just because of him as he wants to become stronger solely just like him. He assures him that he will personally take care of Jiwoo when he will not around since he owes him that much. The teachers told the students that Jiwoo got injured when the building collapsed and now Subin, Jisuk, and Wooin have come to visit him in the hospital. But Jisuk is sure that the building collapsed because of someone's awakened power, otherwise Jiwoo could have escaped with his super speed. They also reveal that the academy is wrapping up the semester 2 weeks earlier due to the collapsed building. On the other side, Mr. Kang orders his men to tell other groups about Caden and his apprentice so that the groups who have grudge against him will first mess up with Jiwoo and then with Caden. Baekdu was humiliated by a single man, and they can't let him off the hook, but they are shocked when suddenly Caden reaches there and heard everything he said. He hurriedly asks his men to kill him, but there was a sudden explosion that drowned the ship. The next day, Hyuk reveals that Mr. Kang is currently missing as he just heard from Baekdu that he has neither returned back nor contacted them. After that, Mr. Jang informs the students that the semester of the academy is over today, but they will come back when the academy will be organized. They all thank Mr. Jang to teach them and that they were lucky to have him as their instructor. They all were leaving when a student calls Jiwoo and introduces himself as Gangseok of Biko, and asks Jiwoo if he will be back for next semester. He was disappointed that he never got to spar with him and will do it in the next semester. Suddenly, he sees Mr. Caden there with Mr. Han and rushes toward him, and he reveals he wanted to say goodbye before he left. It's time for him to go back, but he will visit him later. Jiwoo says he wants to go with him, but Mr. Caden refuses and advises him to keep everything in mind he has taught him and he will come to check in on him. He disappears eventually, and Jiwoo thinks it was all his fault that he had to leave before he could even fully recover. He promises himself that he will become stronger by the time Mr. Caden comes back, so he no longer has to worry about him. After that, when he comes to his room, he is shocked that Mr. Caden was snoring there, and tells him that he has used too much energy and can't go right now. After that, when he comes back home, all the other cats were there and Jiwoo is so happy to see them. The next day, when Jiwoo is going to school, he sees Wooin in the street and is feeding the stray cats. Meanwhile, Jisuk comes there and asks them why they are so obsessed with feeding the cats and himself starts to feed them. He sees a fat cat there and thinks it must be his 9th awakened cat, so he should eat more and get bigger. After a while, when Jiwoo and Wooin enter the class, the girls are shocked to see Jiwoo that seems like a totally different person and becomes so handsome. They are more shocked when Subin enters there and they wonder who she is as her uniform is from Jeon, a girls' high school, and straight go at Jiwoo and Wooin. Jiwoo asks him what she is doing there because she must be at her school. Subin asks the girls what they are staring at and they apologize to her. Jiwoo asks her to go to her school as their teacher is going to be there soon. Meanwhile, the teacher comes there and asks her if she is Subin Lee. He then informs the class that she will be attending their school for a while, and she replies that she heard a lot about his great work and wanted to be taught by him. The teacher then notices Jisuk there and on being inquired, he reveals that he also wanted to learn from him, but the teacher asks him to get out of the class. On the other side, Jisuk's friends get informed that Jisuk has come to school, and they take Suicheol to beat him with them. They want to punish him because he betrayed them, and they went through a lot of humiliation because of him. They are all going back home, and Subin is making fun of him because the teacher kicked out him earlier from the class. She asks him to say the line again and she will be her teacher, while he is feeling ashamed. Meanwhile, Seokjeol comes there and blocks their way. He tells him that he was looking for him the whole summer break, but he was nowhere to be found and thinks he was avoiding him. He was getting ready himself for the fight when Jisuk kicks him. It takes him down in just one attack. On the other hand, In-hyuk tells Jiyoung about Jiwoo as he is Kaiden's apprentice, while she already had a doubt that Jiwoo has something with Kaiden. Meanwhile, a man comes there and informs her that Mr. Suman Kang has come there to meet her, and on being inquired, he reveals that he has come there to ask a favor of Shinhwa. He wants to canvass her district in search of his father as they have found his traces nearby. On the other side, Seokjeol is in a state of shock at how he can take down with just a single kick and thinks to fight him again. Suddenly, they see Subin walking through there and calls her Jisuk's girlfriend. She gets offensive on this and kicks him so badly that he falls from the stairs. He becomes so angry that he breaks the wall, and Mr. Suman notices him there and thinks he is an awakened one. He then comes to him and asks him to not use his powers publicly, and that which group he belongs to. Mr. Suman notices that he doesn't know that he is awakened, but Seokjeol tries to attack him when his arm freezes in the air, and he is unable to move it. He lifts him in the air and calls In-hyuk that he has found an awakened in their district who doesn't know that he is awakened. In-hyuk informs Jiyoung that Mr. Suman has reported to them about a new awakened when she receives a message from Jisuk that he is sleeping over at Jiwoo's house. In-hyuk thinks he has changed a lot since he met Jiwoo, and she also agrees with him. On the other side, Subin tells Jisuk that the boy called her his girlfriend, and he becomes angry about this, but feels relieved when she tells him that she made him pay for his words. Wooin says he was not wrong because she is his girlfriend with a space in between, and they both stare at him like they will eat him up. Suddenly, someone knocked at the door. It was Jiyoung at the door, and brings a lot of snacks for them. She says that she was just in the area, so comes to visit them. When she was about to leave, Jiwoo calls her and apologizes to her for not telling her about Mr. Kaiden and for lying to her. She states he has put her mind at ease because now she knows that he is capable of hiding such important matters from others. Moreover, she thanks him for Jisuk that she never heard him addressing anyone as his friend before, and she saw him smile for the first time since their parents passed away. Meanwhile, Subin texts Isol from Jiwoo's mobile that he is missing her. On the other side, the professor has escaped from jail, and Seongha asks his men to not tell Wooin about this until they figure everything out. The next day, he goes to Wooin and asks him to come with him and that he will drop him to school. But Wooin refused by saying he has to feed the stray cats on his way to school, so he also goes for a walk with him. He notices that the professor has not contacted Wooin after he fled, but wonders why he escaped because he was the one who made a deal to cooperate with the Union for Wooin's sake, and he knows better than anyone that this would get Wooin in trouble. They were walking when they see Jisuk, Subin, and Jiwoo there, and she asks him what brings him there so early in the morning. He then leaves them and calls someone to assign their agents to Wooin for protection, and if something wrong happens, he will take responsibility for that. On the other side, Isol is waiting for Jiwoo outside his school, and he can't believe he has sent her a message. Meanwhile, they all reach there and Jiwoo asks him what she is doing there. She tells him that she received a message from him and that he is missing her, while Subin says she messaged her from his phone because her phone was out of battery, and she was the one who was missing Isol. She gets furious with them and runs away from there while they both follow her. After that, Wooin goes to meet the professor, but the agent says he can't meet him and they will get in touch with him when he is available. Mr. Seongha receives the professor's traces from somewhere, but when they reach there, they found their men dead. Subin is trying to contact Isol, but she is not responding to her calls and messages, and Jisuk says she would definitely do that as what they did to her. Jiwoo notices Wooin seemed a little down and wonders if something happened between him and his professor the previous day. Wooin again goes to meet the professor, and Seongha asks him to wait a little more and that he will let him know when the time is right. Wooin asks him if something happened to the professor because he is not the type to ask others to pass a message on, but Seongha asks him to go home. But when he refuses to go, he reveals that the professor has escaped along with the Klein brothers and that they are investigating right now, and let him know when they have information. When he comes outside, Subin sees him there and says he could have come with her, but he leaves the place without replying. He is shocked that how can he escape leaving him behind. On the other hand, Mr. Kaiden feels there are many awakened ones nearby, and it feels like they are protecting him. When Ji-young knows that Klein's brothers have escaped from jail, she calls Jisuk home and dispatched their agents to Ji-woo's house while the Union assigned their agents to Wooin. Mr. Caden went outside the home and confirms that the agents belong to Shinhwa, and judging from their position and line of sight, they are protecting Ji-woo, not monitoring him. Suddenly, he notices when Ji-woo told Ji-young that he is Caden's apprentice, she seemed to know already, which means that In-hyuk blabber about him to Ji-young. On the other hand, In-hyuk is having a very bad feeling for some reason, as it's like he has forgotten to feed his cat. The next day, Wooin missed school and not picking up their calls. They decided to go to his home to check him up, but when they reach there, Subin is shocked that Wooin lives all alone in a place like this when he comes from behind and says it is not so bad. Ji-woo asks him if there is something wrong with him because he has been acting weird since he visited the professor. He reveals that his professor is Dr. Deline, and Subin knows him as he is an awakened one who is wanted for conducting illegal experiments and that he ran away, and the Union is after him. Wooin states that he may be a wanted criminal, but to him, he is like a parent, and now he wants to ask him face to face if he really meant to leave him behind. Ji-woo says they should find him together as he couldn't have gone far with the Union on his tail, and Jisuk and Subin also agree with him. They notice the Union's agents are outside his house and they wonder how they can avoid them. On the other side, the professor is with a man hiding at some place while the Klein brothers are in a very bad condition. They all check the places where they have doubts to be the professor would be there, but find him nowhere. Jisuk receives a call from Ji-young and Subin asks him to turn off the phone, and he did the same. They are now left with 4 places and Wooin suggests them split up and search the places separately. Ji-woo asks them to get in touch with one another after checking those places. In-hyuk and Seonga are worried about them and can't reach any one of them, and they have the doubt that they shook off the agents. Seonga guesses that they are probably in search of the professor and not aware that the Klein brothers escaped as well. 2 agents find the professor and are shocked to see there is another one aside from the professor, and he hypnotizes them as they have seen nothing and go back to another place. Ji-woo reaches the place that Wooin told him, but he finds nothing there and thinks to inform the others about that when he hears an explosion. On the other hand, Mr. Caden is trying to contact him, but he is not picking up his call. The explosion was from the awakened powers of Klein's brother, who has killed many agents in just one attack. All the other agents think they should isolate the place and prevent any further damage until backup arrives because they can't put up a fight against him. Their head asks them to get to their positions and activates their spatial isolation devices, but before that, Klein's brother attacks them. Ji-woo reaches there and holds her hand. He recognizes Ji-woo and pushes him back while Ji-woo is shocked to see him as he was arrested, so how he can be outside. The agents apologize to him that they can't help him to fight because they need to spread out and isolate this place. The Klein brother is attacking Ji-woo, but this time his attacks are not working on him, and it seems like the durability of his body has been increased. He again attacks him, but Jisuk comes there and blocks his attack. Ji-woo asks him to stall him so he can move those people who are passed out. Jisuk attacks him, but he is way stronger than him and blocks his attacks easily. Meanwhile, Subin also reaches there and is shocked to see such destruction. In the meantime, Ji-woo moved all the people and the Clean brother makes so much destruction there. On the other hand, the other one tries to attack the agents when In-hyuk reaches there and saves them, and asks him about his elder brother. He orders all the agents to spread out and contain the area, and uses an immense amount of energy to attack him. Soon, he takes him down and makes his condition even worse than before. On the other side, Ji-woo, Subin, and Jisuk are fighting with the other brother, but he is much stronger than them. He is one of the notorious criminals, and he is fighting against all 3 of them like it's nothing. Ji-woo tells them that he will fight him in close proximity, and they too attack him with all their might. Jisuk asks him to hold him off until he and Subin gather enough power to attack him. Ji-woo moves forward to attack him while they are gathering powers and attacking him again and again without giving him a chance to get stable. Jisuk and Subin attack with their powers while Ji-woo is holding him, and there is a sudden explosion. They think they have beaten him up but are all shocked when he again gets up and is ready to attack. On the other hand, Mr. Caden is running to find Ji-woo as he is unable to contact him and he thinks something must happen to him. While Klein's brother wonders why all 3 of them have such exceptional powers when they are only in their late teens, and he wants to take them with him, but in this situation, it seems impossible. Jisuk suggests to him that they should part there and go on their way, and Subin also agrees with him. He judges from Subin's use of ice that she is from the Union and Jisuk is from Shinhwa, and that he has to pay both groups back for what they have done to him, and plans to kill both of them. He attacks them with a stronger power than before, but they are unable to block him, while Ji-woo uses his super speed, but he catches him up and attacks him. Jiwoo gets seriously injured and is unable to move from his place. He then moves towards Subin and tries to kill her, but Jisuk reaches him and attacks him. Subin attacks him with ice, but his awakened power is fire, so it melts all of a sudden and he falls to the ground. He then tries to burn her while Jiwoo is trying to move. On the other side, the professor is leaving with his companion when Wooin reaches there and he is shocked to see him come back to them. Jisuk asks him why he wants to kill them, as it was his sister who locked him up, so he should go fight her instead. He then attacks Jisuk and says Jiyoung's expression will change when she finds out that her brother died a miserable death. Jiwoo is trying to get some power from force control when Jisuk asks him to run away from there, but he thinks he will never leave his friends behind and again gets up to fight. While Klein's brother says none of them can beat him even at their best, and Jiwoo has the energy for just a single strike and it will barely be enough to get him through his flames. Meanwhile, Mr. Caden finds him and is shocked to see that they are again fighting with a criminal, and that Jiwoo is trying to give it one last shot, but he is not fast enough to get through the fire and knock him out. Jisuk gives him a stream of wind so that he can move faster to attack him. Meanwhile, Subin weakened the fire by using an opposing alarm, and now it's time for Jiwoo to go. His friends made this chance for him, so he has to go through it even though his whole body breaks up. He reaches him and attacks him with his full might and finally succeeded to take him down. He gets unconscious and falls to the ground while Jiwoo also gets unconscious. Mr. Caden is watching all this and appreciates their trick to help Jiwoo. They go to Jiwoo and ask him if he is alright, and he replies that his arm hurts really badly and has no energy left to move. He then asks them to find Wooin because he might also be in danger. Come to Wooin and asks the professor about what happened at the union, but the professor doesn't reply and asks his companion to move, but he asks him to take Wooin with them, and this is what the professor didn't want because Wooin's life will get in danger if he accompanies them. Moreover, he says they can't leave a witness behind, but Professor attacks Wooin just to show him and asks him to move right now. But Lobern says he wants to make sure that he is dead just in case he survived his attack. Before he attacks Wooin, the professor attacks him from behind, and he is now sure that Wooin is his apprentice and that he is just trying to save him. He asks the professor how he dares hide such a thing from them. Plus, when the higher-ups find out, he and his apprentice will go through well, but the professor warns him that he will kill him if he touches Wooin. Lobern hypnotized Wooin and he starts to attack the professor while he is just trying to block his attacks. He thinks he has to Wooin under his control and has to give his best to overpower him. He promised himself that he would never hurt him, but he has to do it right now and takes him down while Wooin gets seriously injured. But he again gets up and attacks the professor, and Lobern is getting happy to see all this. After a while, Mr. Seongher reaches there and is shocked to see Wooin and thinks something about him seems off. Lobern asks him who is he, and when Seongha introduces himself, he says he has never heard about him before. The professor says he will take care of Wooin and he must deal with Lobern, and Seongha agrees on this. The professor takes Wooin separately from there so Lobern doesn't get a chance to mess with Wooin. Meanwhile, Seongha attacks him with his awakened powers and isolates the whole space while Lobern is shocked to see his power. He asks him if he was the one who invaded the Union and made a mess there, and he tries to hypnotize him, but Seongha attacks him before that and takes him down. On the other side, when the professor is running by taking Wooin, he pushes him back and attacks him. He thinks it would be best for Wooin that he dies there, as he is nothing but a worthless piece of scum to Wooin. He is about to attack him when Mr. Caden comes from nowhere and sits on Wooin's shoulder. He punches him and takes him down and shouts at the professor why he was just trying to die by Wooin's hands. If he really thinks he will be able to live that he killed his mentor, then would Jiwoo have been okay watching his friend suffer? After a while, Seongher reaches there and thinks the professor took him down, while Mr. Caden appears from behind and warns him that he is watching him. He then asks Seongha to take him back to the Union. After that, he investigates him, and the professor revealed that the opponents sent Lobern to find him after they stopped hearing from Klein's brother. And Seongha asks him when he made a deal with the Union, so why did he join hands with Lobern and escaped? He did this because of Wooin, because they probably target Wooin the next time or a hostage to control him. He admits that he did something wrong and is ready to deal with the consequences, but they should leave Wooin out of this. On the other side, the three are in the hospital while Jisuk and Subin are fighting as usual, and Mr. Caden and Jiwoo are enjoying their fight. Meanwhile, Wooin is lying in the hospital unconscious, and the doctor reveals that he has a skull fracture. He also broke his neck, so he needs complete bed rest for a while, and they are all shocked to hear this. When he wakes up, Jiwoo asks him if he met his professor, and he just remembers when he was going. The next day, the teacher comes to visit them and they all tell him that they got into an accident. He says that he got confused because they have gotten into several accidents already, while Jiwoo says it's the first for Subin. Meanwhile, In-hyuk reaches there and greets the teacher and tells him that he was the one who called him several times and told him about their accidents. After that, he feeds snacks to Mr. Kaden and tells Jiwoo that Jiyoung wants to see him in her office as she has something to talk to him about. Mr. Suman took permission from Jiyoung to bring Seokjeol with him, who seems very happy with the decision. Suddenly, he sees Jiwoo there and asks about Jisuk, and In-hyuk tells him that he is a new awakened that had found recently. When Jiwoo refuses to tell him about Jisuk, he challenges him with a spar, and Jiwoo accepts it instead of the several injuries he has. They both reach the fighting ground and Jiyoung is unable to understand why this is happening. Seokjeol wants to show them all how strong he is. They both are ready to fight, and Jiwoo guesses from his posture that maybe he fights in a close range or he tricks people that way and fights from a distance. Mr. Suman asks In-hyuk to stop him as he is wounded pretty badly, but In-hyuk assures him that Jiwoo will be alright because he is the one who defeated Suchin back in the academy. And he surely confirms that when Jiwoo defeats Seokjeol in just one attack with one hand only. After that, he goes to meet Jiyoung and she apologizes for not telling him that the Klein brothers had escaped as they thought the truth will shake him up, so they try to protect him while keeping that information from him. But Jiwoo says it was his fault because he gave her agents the slip knowing they were only to protect him. She appreciates him that he is getting stronger by the second. With Kaden as his mentor, he will get even stronger. While leaving her office, he praises her by saying the dress looks well on her and comes back to ask her about the snacks bar as they all told him to bring some snacks for them. She herself goes with him and buys snacks for them, and Jiwoo invites her to come and eat with them and she agrees. On the other side, In-hyuk goes to her office and is surprised because she was not there while she is carrying bags for Jiwoo. When they go inside, Jisuk and Subin are fighting and stop to see Jiyoung there. They are all eating snacks and they are shocked to see Wooin, who is eating more than all. At night, Jiyoung went to drop Jiwoo home as she thinks he is still healing and is discharging too early, but Jiwoo is much worried about his cats. When he gets home, he is training so hard than before and Mr. Kaden asks him why he is pushing himself so hard. Jiwoo reveals he felt so pathetic when Jisuk and Subin were on the brink of death while he just had to sit. And his heart was going to burst when Jisuk told him to run away because he was too weak. Mr. Kaden assures him that he will help him reach his goal, and then puts his power into Jiwoo so he can feel how to move and use his powers. The next day in the hospital, Jisuk and Subin are on the 5th floor and challenge each other. Whoever reaches the 1st floor first wins, and the one who loses will become the winner's slave for a week. They promised Wooin that the winner will buy him snacks, but In-hyuk reaches there and says if their goal is to reach the 1st floor, then he can throw them out of the window. On the other side, Mr. Suman reveals that Baekdu was behind helping those criminals, and now he fears that Shinhwa and Union will find out sooner because they are doing their investigations. Meanwhile, Suchin's father reaches there and he learns about his defeat in the academy. He apologizes to him by saying he was caught off guard, but he attacks his own son and punishes him. Suman reaches there and holds Suchon while forbidding Supal to do so, but he says his mistake is not forgettable. He then asks Suchon to prove that he will not lose to anyone if he doesn't let his guard down and make sure no one gets to mess with him. The next morning, Jiwoo is feeding the stray cats when Suchon appears there and states he wants to talk to him. He challenges Jiwoo for a spar, not right now but after 10 days, and this time, they will not settle on simply who wins and loses but fight until one of them becomes incapable of combat. Moreover, Jiwoo can't say no because this is also an order from his father, the chairman of Baekdu, and he will do whatever he can to bring him down. When he had left, Jiwoo asks Mr. Kaden what should he do now, and he replies he just has to train hard like he always does. They all are shocked when they learn about his spar with Suchon, while they are informed when Baekdu contacted Shinhwa for their ring. And they all are worried about him as they know Suchon will not let his guard down this time. When he comes back home, Jiyoung was already there waiting for him, and she is worried about him the spar as it will not be that friendly and one of them will get severely injured. She then asks him to come to Shinhwa first thing in the morning tomorrow as she will help him with his training. Mr. Kaden says it will be great for him if he learns from Jiyoung too because she is known as the strongest awakened one in Korea, and he shouldn't miss a chance to learn from someone as talented as her. The next day, he goes to Shinhwa where Jiyoung is waiting for him and states that they don't have the time to teach him anything, so they will train by having practice fights. She uses similar skills that were used by Suchon by creating a stream of wind that is crushing him down. She states that she is not an expert at using these skills as other strong gravitational awakened ones, but it's enough to mimic Suchon. She then asks her to show how he will deal with them, and Jiwoo uses his super speed to reach her but couldn't even touch her. At night, when he gets back home, falls down as he was too much tired. He tells Mr. Caden that none of his skills worked on her, while Mr. Caden says she has been talented and strong since little, but still nothing compared to him. He asks Jiwoo to get some rest and get back to training, and later, he uses force control to regain his powers. On the other side, Suchin is getting trained by his father, who is treating him so hard. Finally, the day to spar has come and Mr. Caden is looking down as he has an awful stomachache. Jiwoo says he can go by himself, but Caden wants to go with him as the spar is most important. He wants to go with him. In-hyuk takes him to the Shinhwa where they are all waiting for him and asks them to go to the ring. Jiyoung asks them to make a deal before the fight that they will not spar again regardless of the result, and Mr. Supel agrees by thinking Suchon will settle this once and for all. Suchon intends to crush him down in today's sparring as his father told him to do so. Mr. Supel says Jiwoo should use his other awakened power to commune with animals to fight against Suchon, and Mr. Caden sits behind Jiwoo during the spar. They start fighting and Suchin spreads his powers more than before and gets stronger and pressuring the whole room with gravity to slow Jiwoo down. Jiwoo is focusing his power on a target that's been slowed down, but he is getting dragged into the floor and is unable to move within the boundary of Suchin's power. But he disappeared within a second and punches him with a strong force. Suchin is shocked that he has gotten stronger than before. Suchin is trying to slow him down, but Jiwoo is way quicker than him and his gravitational force is not affecting him. Mr. Caden smirks that the old Jiwoo would have been pinned down by the gravity field, but not the Jiwoo now. Suchin will have no choice but to collect his gravity field up and focus all his power on Jiwoo to hold him down. But the thing is, without the field, Jiwoo will be able to move with more ease, which will make it harder for Suchin to keep up with his speed. This is not about who is more powerful, it's about who is better at fighting in combat. Suchin doesn't have the talent or the experience to overcome Jiwoo's level of combat ability. He attacks Jiwoo with so much power that it makes a crash into the floor. If Jiyoung hadn't trained him, he would have been brought down by that skill. He wonders when he improved so much so fast and thinks if he catches him just once, he will shatter him into pieces. He decreases the range and increases the power. Still, it's not enough to catch up to Jiwoo's speed. He then asks Jiwoo why he is dragging this out and let's settle this once and for all. This time, he is prepared for Jiwoo's electric skill and his barriers incomparably stronger than before, but this is the only skill he can use to get through his power anyway. He moves forward and attacks him with his full might and Suchin gets defeated and has been incapacitated. In-hyuk announces that the sparring ended there and congratulates Jiwoo on his wins. Mr. Supel is feeling so much embarrassed and refuses to take Suchon to the hospital. He asks what Shinhwa's motive is to train that kid in the sky as they are training an awakened one in secret without registering him. Jiwoo states he is misunderstanding the situation as they didn't train him and registered him the moment they found him. He notices Shinhwa cares a lot about him so much to give him private lessons, while Jiyoung says they simply doing their best as his sponsor. In-hyuk also reveals that he fought with the Klein brothers 2 times and they get shocked to hear this, but Mr. Supel still doesn't believe how he can be so strong. Suddenly, Caden appears there and states Jiwoo is so strong because he is his apprentice and asks Mr. Supel what is wrong with Jiwoo being so strong. He gets embarrassed and asks Suman to take Suchin to the hospital and tells Jiyoung that they will have a serious talk about this. Caden says it was not her fault as all the instructors at the academy knew about it, but he leaves without saying anything. This time, Jiwoo is feeling satisfied as he took down an opponent who was fully prepared for the fight and wasn't caught off guard this time. In-hyuk apologizes to Caden as he had no choice but to tell the chairwoman about him and Jiwoo, while Caden is wondering why he wasn't giving him snacks like he always does as he forgot for a moment that he is not a cat. Jiyoung asks him how long he is planning to stay in Korea and Caden replies he just come there to see Jiwoo's big sparring. On the other side, Suchin is getting scared of his father as his defeat is a humiliation for Baekdu, but Suman asks him to not worry and learn from the defeats and work harder. He then goes to Supel and requests him not to be too hard on Suchin because his opponent was Caden's apprentice, and he walks away by saying to keep Suchin out of his sight forever. At night, Jisuk, Subin, and Woon come to his home and shout at him about why he didn't tell them about his spar and ask him about the results. And when he tells them that he won the fight, they all get very happy and laugh at Suchin's condition. They all come inside his home while chatting and Mr. Caden was sitting on the sofa there. They all get shocked to see him and Jisuk and Subin are meeting him for the first time. Jiwoo introduces him as his mentor and introduces them all to Caden. Jisuk is nervous as he thinks he has met him before, also his voice sounds familiar, but Caden says they are meeting for the first time. After some time, he asks Jiwoo about casein nitrate and Jiwoo replies he went for a walk. Subin asks him if he is Jiwoo's mentor, then his power should be super speed, while Kaden says he just teaches him force control and other things. Subin and Jisuk say Jiwoo's electrical attribute is his influence, and Subin reveals that everyone was all about how electrical attribute needs to be re-evaluated, and this was all because of one person, whose name was Kaden. Jisuk reveals Kaden is also known for his nasty temper, and that he smashes anyone who gets on his nerves, and they are glad that he is not in Korea. Jiwoo reveals the person they are talking about is his mentor, Kaden. They both are in so much shock that Subin falls her noodles on Kaden. They get panic and are terrified that he will kill them for that. After that, they bow before him and ask for forgiveness. He forgives them and tells Jiwoo that he is going now. When he has left, Wooin reveals that he knew already as he ran into him a few times, and they get offended and start to beat him up. The next morning, Jiwoo is training when Mr. Kaden is instructing him to try to work on combat skills. Suddenly, he asks him to stop because he feels the kid's presence outside the house. They enter his house while Jisuk and Subin are laughing. On being inquired, Subin tells him that Jisuk called and provokes Gangseok yesterday out of nowhere, the one who was in the academy. He calls Jisuk, who asks him to not call him again as he doesn't want to talk to him, and if he wants to fight him, he has to beat Suchin and Jiwoo first. After hanging up, they both laughed a lot, and Subin reveals that ever since she met his mentor, she can't stop thinking about him, then asks Casein Nitrate if he met Mr. Kaden because he was just her type.